of the public to the Planning Committee. First item on the agenda is apologies for absence. Do we have an apology for?
We have apologies from Councillor Stevens,
Councillor Stevens.
Councillor Tuffin is subbing today.
Councillor Stubborn. Well, okay. We've got everyone on full house. Okay. Item 2, declarations of interest. Anybody have any declarations of interest? No declarations? Okay. Item 3 is minutes of the last meeting. They have been circulated. Is it your wish that I sign them as a true record? Is that agreed? Agreed. Item 4 is Chair's urgent business. There is none. Item 5 is questions from the members of the public. I don't believe we have any.
We have no questions.
Item 6 is planning applications. There is, as I'm sure you're aware, only one application today, which is land at Seaton Hill. Item 6, land at Seaton Hill, William Prance Road. The case officer is Alistair Wagstaff, and I will ask him to make the presentation. Okay.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good afternoon, members. The application before you is application 17/01288/full, and it relates to the land on Seaton Hill, which is to the east of Future Inn. The application as submitted is for the erection of an office building, Class B1, and a retail store, Class 1, which is further restricted by the conditions proposed. It also includes a cafe, use Class A3, as part of the retail store, and provides 350 car parking spaces with an associated landscaping scheme. Just on this slide here, members, you can see the application site here edged in orange. Just to familiarise yourselves, you can just see the Tavistock Road here, and William Prance Road running along the bottom where the access is into the site provided. You can just see here the Future Inn, the Land Registry Office, the Territorial Army Centre and the ship building here, just to familiarise yourself with the location. Just before I go into too much detail on the application, I do need to point out that the application is submitted by the range and it is identified for being their new head offices for their businesses and a flagship retail store with a staff training facility. However, in determining the application, we do need to bear in mind that the planning permission runs with the land and is not operator specific. And as such, in dealing with our determination of the application, we need to bear in mind it relates to the matters contained in the application and any restrictions placed in the conditions on that application. Just going into the detail of the scheme here, you can just see the proposed layout of the site. You can see William Prance Road here. This is the existing access, which is provided in to serve the Future Inn. You can just see an additional access point is being introduced slightly further east down William Prance Road, and that provides connecting infrastructure to link into the central roundabout on the site. The scheme itself, you can see the retail store is this area. I'm just hovering over here with an associated service area and a garden centre over there. That's attached through a glazed atrium to the office building here, and you can just see the car parking here. What you can just see here on the next slide is the scheme is taking advantage of the topography of the site, which slopes northward, and this enables a decked car parking solution to be provided, and as such there's a lower level of car parking provided here, which is a travelator access up to the main entrance of the store, and you can see the entrance points along the eastern access into this lower car parking area. Turning to the internal elements of the scheme, the retail store has a gross internal floor area of 7,700 square metres, and that includes a 177 square metre cafe and also an external garden centre, which is just in this area over here, which is just short of 900 square metres. The office element of the scheme is 7,755 square metres gross internal area, and those two buildings are connected, say, through the central atrium. The retail store itself, you can just see the ground floor layout here, which is principally for the open sale of goods with a small storage area. You can see the main entrance point into the store, which is from the raised car parking level. In relation to the office building, that's access through the atrium building. There's an access point which connects from William Prance Road and a further access point into the atrium from that central car parking area. In relation to the offices, the lower floors all correspond to a broadly the same layout. As you can just see here, this is the first floor. And in relation to the retail store, that's only 2 stories. The second level of that is a mezzanine level, and I can just see here for members' information, this is the mezzanine area, which wraps around the edge of the store, leaving an open, vaulted element in the centre of the store. Sorry, bear with me. As I say, in relation to the office, there's only one level, which is the very top level, which doesn't accord with the same broad internal layout, and that's the very top floor, which is only focused on the southern aspect of the offices for further floor areas and meeting rooms. Just moving on to look at the elevations now. What you can just see along here is the elevation proposed to William Prance Road. What you can see here is this is the retail building. You've got the glazed atrium and the office. You can see the design of the building has an orange pulse which runs through it as part of the design detail. This extends across the office, across the retail store, is picked up also in the hard landscaping details, and also then provides a connection onto the office which seeks to connect the elements of the building. This elevation here is the elevation which will be visible from the access road into the future inn, and you can again see that this orange detail is picked up in a protruding feature of a cube onto that elevation. These are the other elevations you can just see on this one here. This is the elevation as if you're looking from within the Seaton Barracks Parade Ground site. You can see there how the decked car parking solution works there, and again you can see the orange accent detail with the blue which has been used on the building. The elevation at the bottom is taken from the new eastern access route which has been provided into the site, and I just draw members' attention here. You can just see the green elements along here. To help lessen the impact of the scheme, there's a green climbing plant solution which is being proposed, which will provide an element of green wall to that to work alongside the wider landscaping scheme. I just thought before we go into more detail about the application, it was just useful for members to understand the context of the site within which this sits. This is an excerpt of the diagram from the joint local plan, and it sits alongside policy Ply 38, which is the proposed allocation in the joint local plan for the Derriford Commercial Centre, which includes the former Seaton Barracks Parade Ground area here, the Derriford Business Park, and then moves into an area of land known as the North West Quadrant, which sits in close proximity to Derriford Hospital. Just for members' information, you can just see in relation to the lower section of the site, these yellow lines here are part of the aspiration for new road connections to be delivered within that site. The pink area shown on here is about delivering more active frontages to this area, given its more urban context as a commercial centre we're seeking to deliver. And this orange area, which extends right the way from William Prance Road up through the site onto the hospital and the interchange, is an aspiration for a key public realm route, but also with the aspiration of delivering public transport through the site. When the application first came in as a pre-application, the scheme didn't include this full connection route going along here, which according to the policy Ply 38, it provided only a normal junction arrangement on the eastern corridor to serve into the service area and the lower car parking. As part of the negotiations officers and the applicants have been having, we've now secured that this entire route is delivered, which provides some of those key elements of infrastructure of policy Ply 38 and provides an additional access point into the wider area. This helps seek to ensure that the wider Derriford Commercial Centre can potentially come forward with serviced access. It also ensures that this additional area of land here, which is left vacant by this proposal, is able to be serviced for future development going into the forward. And also the junction is now an all-movement junction serving the site, which has got capacity to deal with the wider requirements of the wider site. In a slightly fainter bit here, you can just see here, while this isn't being delivered by the site, this is demonstration by the applicant's transport consultants that the requirement for the Seaton Arc, that public transport connection route, can actually be facilitated alongside this development to again help deliver those aspirations of policy apply 38. Just moving on to some more of the specifics of the scheme, you can just see here the landscaping scheme which is designed to support the proposal. This is the elevation on William Prance Road. A number of the existing trees are being retained and incorporated into that new landscaping solution. And you can just see in here that in front of the atrium building you've got a high quality landscaped, both soft and hard solution to provide an attractive arrival point into the offices. I'd also just draw members' attention to what the trees you can see along here. These are a very long established group of Monterey pines, and the scheme has been designed to allow those to be retained as a key landscape and visual benefit to the local area. You can just see here the other section of the site. Again, here you can just see the existing roundabout here, and again the applicants have sought to provide a high quality both soft and hard landscape solution to provide a seating area out there for use of the staff, people in the store, and also as the community the wider commercial centre develops, that will be an open area available there. They've also included elements of landscaping within that higher decked car parking level, just again to introduce an improved visual appearance there. And these are just a couple of elevations for members' information. You can just see how the proposed store works alongside those landscaping matters. And you can just see on this elevation, which is the one to the New Eastern Connection route, you can just see the approach of having the climbing plants working along there to just help lessen the impact. And again, just on this bottom one, you can just see, again, this area where I'm hovering with my mouse just shows that New Eastern access point in the edge of the store, and you can just see the relationship to keep those away from the Monterey pine trees there, and you can just see the Territorial Army Centre further along there. And again, that's just the William Prance Road elevation with the landscaping proposed and the viewpoint from the future inn. Just a couple of pictures just to explain how the scheme might work in context. You can just see an illustrated view here from Tavistock Road with the future inn here. You can just see the proposed building sitting in the background there. This is another visual illustration shown from William Prance Road, and again you can see the approach to the store with the offices in the background, and just an alternative view there looking more towards the offices which are being proposed. Finally, this has got an aerial viewpoint here which just shows as if you're looking across the Seaton Barracks parade ground. Again, you can just see the store there with the main store entrance and features there. Just to give members some of the key bits of information about the application, obviously they're set out in full detail in the officer report, but we have received no letters of representation in relation to the application, although there are a number of detailed consultation responses which are set out in the officer report. There are a couple of matters which I just think it's important to bring to members' attention. The first of those relates to the transport considerations. These are set out in detail in the office report from paragraphs 69 to 87. In relation to the implications on the local highway network, officers are satisfied that it provides a suitable solution with the necessary connections being provided into those works, including the new Derriford Transport Scheme once completed. But it's just important, I think, to identify that there has been a significant amount of concern from Highways England in relation to the potential implications of the scheme on the strategic highway network, being the A38 and specifically the Manadon Junction. There's been extensive negotiations between the applicant, officers and Highways England to try and overcome those issues, and they really relate to the implications of the office element of the scheme and the journeys to work, particularly in the AM peak on the eastbound off-slip of the Manadon Junction. Officers have worked with the applicants and proposed a wide range of measures to hopefully alleviate the concerns of Highways England. They include an enhanced staff travel planning measures which deal with not just the occupation of the building but from the relocation from the range's existing offices into this store to promote travel by sustainable means, and that will be fully supported by the Council's Plymotion scheme which we're currently running. It also includes a requirement that the car parking spaces provided for the staff of the store will be limited to 50 spaces until the provision of the Forder Valley Link Road comes alongside, and that will work alongside the staff travel measures. In relation to a Section 106 requirement, the applicants are providing £95,000 towards the Derriford Transport Scheme and a further £5,000 to help support measures to deliver improvements to the Manadon Junction. There's also a commitment to provide a real-time bus display in the atrium of the building to advise staff and visitors where the closest buses are and what times they'll be leaving, again to encourage sustainable means. In the Section 106 agreement, there's also a requirement that the store and the offices are only occupied by the range until the opening of the Forder Valley Link Road, which itself provides capacity improvements to the Manadon Junction. And there's also a restriction on the range from occupying their proposed new offices and their existing offices at the same time to ensure that the detail contained within the transport assessment is accurate based on the occupier. There are also a number of planning conditions, including a requirement for a phased occupation of the office and a staggering of the start times of office staff, again to alleviate travel in the peak hours. Subject to these measures, Highways England are now at a position where they believe the application won't have a severe impact on the strategic highway network, and as such officers are content, subject to the conditions in the Section 106, that it provides an acceptable solution in transportation terms. The other key matter to bring to members' attention relates to the retail considerations of the application. As members will be aware, the principal considerations relate to the sequential test to site assessment, the impacts of the scheme on the vitality and viability of the network of centres and investment in them, but also how the scheme relates to the spatial retail strategy of the core strategy and the joint local plan. Key to those matters is the approach to the Derriford Commercial Centre. The core strategy has had a long-standing requirement for the delivery of the district centre. However, the area vision, which provides guidance on that, did suggest that the district centre should be centred towards the west side of the Tavistock Road, while the joint local plan, unlike the core strategy, which doesn't allocate a site and only gives broad direction, seeks to allocate the proposed district centre, which I showed you earlier in the presentation, as part of the commercial centre. In officers forming their consideration, which is set out in paragraphs 18 to 53, they have borne in mind the appeal decision which was recovered by the Secretary of State relating to the Northwest Quadrant site adjacent to the hospital, which previously proposed the district centre site. Officers have used the guidance of the inspector in formulating the decisions they've made in relation to the retail considerations, particularly in relation to the Derriford district centre. In relation to the sequential test, officers have considered the matter submitted by the applicants and undertaken their own assessment. In relation to the city centre, officers are satisfied that there are no sequentially preferable sites. There was some concern over the currently vacant BHS building, and were we considering only the retail element of this scheme, that could have potentially been a sequentially preferable site. However, this scheme also includes a substantive quantum of office, which makes that site unable to meet those sites, and as such officers are satisfied that there are no sequentially preferable sites in the city centre. Officers' viewpoint is the same for the network of existing local and district centres. However, there is a concern in relation, as I said, to the core strategy, which promotes the Derriford district centre, which needs to be considered in that context. I will come over on to a conclusion on that, because it does mean that we can't conclude that the retail sequentially test has definitely been passed in this instance, but I will cover that at the end of the report. Moving on to the potential impact of the scheme, this needs to consider both the impact on the vitality and viability, but also on the likely investment in the network of existing and proposed district centres. In relation to the city centre, the proposed scheme will result in a loss of trade of £1.38 million, but this equates only to an impact of 0.2%, which officers consider individually is acceptable on the city centre. However, I do need to bring members' attention to the determination which was made on application 15/01831/full, which was for the erection of a retail store with associated car park landscaping and access, which was identified as a flagship store for Next. In that case, officers' viewpoint was that the impact of that scheme, resulting in a 1.4% impact on the city centre, was significantly adverse. Members did not make the same decision at their committee, where they considered the impact of that scheme was only adverse. The reason for bringing this matter to your attention is because in giving our advice to you, we do need to also consider the cumulative impact of this proposal alongside that proposal, and officers' viewpoint remains that that will have a significantly adverse impact. However, when considering the additional impact that this scheme would have, in addition to that of that store and other known commitments, officers are satisfied that there won't be a material difference in that impact created by this scheme, and as such consider that in relation to the impacts on vitality and viability of the city centre, that there won't be an additional impact. The same viewpoint goes for the existing network of district centres. Turning now to the impact on investment, again, officers are satisfied that this won't lead to a significantly adverse impact on investment in the city centre or the network of existing centres or the proposed district centre at Derriford. As such, officers are satisfied that in relation to the core strategy, that this proposal broadly accords with it, with the exception of the potential issue associated with the Derriford Commercial Centre. In relation to the joint local plan and its retail strategy, officers are satisfied that it's fully in accordance with that strategy. Just before I give the conclusion, I just wanted to give members a bit of an update on the Section 106 matters. This application has had viability issues identified as part of its consideration, has been the subject of a full viability appraisal, which has been considered by the officers of the council in that regard. And it has been acknowledged that there are viability considerations which need to be taken into account, and this relates principally to the provision of the office element of the scheme, which has particular viability constraints in Plymouth, as all office development is known to have. However, the scheme is making a range of contributions. This includes a contribution of just over £87,000 towards ecological mitigation measures, and this will be directed towards the Derriford Community Park, and also an element towards the Lower Bircham Valley for improvements to wet woodland habitats. In relation to transport measures, the scheme will make a contribution, is outlined to make a contribution of £95,000 towards the Derriford Transport Scheme, and a further £5,000 directed towards identifying improvements at the Manadon Junction. The scheme does also have a range of mitigation measures which officers have considered in relation to the Section 106 requirements, and this principally relates to the associated infrastructure to help facilitate the commercial centre, including the over-specification of the eastern access route and the provision of this northern route connecting into the central roundabout, but also the over-specification of the junction onto William Prance Road to provide the capacity there. Those measures financially include tot up to a sum of approximately £1.3 million, of which the applicants will be paying half of that, in addition to the wider land owner of the rest of the site contributing to those other elements. Given these measures, officers are satisfied in relation to the mitigation measures on the local infrastructure, that they are satisfactory in this instance. So just turning now to the conclusions. These are set out in detail in section 13 of the officer report, but the key point just to make aware to you as members is that in relation to the potential concern with the Derriford District Centre in relation to what's set out in the core strategy, officers have considered that against the material considerations which weigh both in favour and against the application, and officers are satisfied in this instance that the potential conflict with the sequential test should not result in the refusal of this application, and as such, officers' recommendation to you as members is to resolve to approve the application conditionally, subject to the detailed conditions set out in the report, and subject to the signing of a Section 106 within the agreed timescales. However, I also need to bring members' attention to the fact that should members seek to approve this application, there will be a requirement for the application to be referred to the Secretary of State in accordance with Circular and Direction 2 of 2009 to see if he wishes to call in the decision. Should he decide not to do that within the 21-day period, the decision would be issued in line with members' decision on the application. Many thanks.
Thank you very much indeed, Ali, for that presentation. We have only one speaker on this particular application, and I understand it's Mr. Mike Cotter who's going to speak on behalf of the applicant. Yeah. Thank you. Afternoon, Mr. Cotter. Welcome to the committee. The format is that you have 5 minutes to address the committee. We usually remind you a minute before the end of that period. Is that okay? So whenever you're ready, thank you.
Thank you. As I said, my name is Michael Cotter. I'm the Finance and Property Manager at The Range, and I really welcome the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm grateful for that. Firstly, thank you to Alistair for a thorough description and a positive recommendation to you of our proposed development, which is something that really is a culmination of many years of negotiations and work between the Range and Plymouth City Council, and really our joint desire between us to provide a new international headquarters and a flagship store for the Range in Plymouth. And you know, I think the Range is really proud to have grown up out of Plymouth, and I hope Plymouth is similarly proud that a company of the Range really wants to reflect its heritage and build a facility such as this to really commit its future to the city. And certainly we're very excited about achieving that in the future between ourselves. As well as that, I think we're certainly hoping that this development will be a catalyst for the area and for other developments in there, and with the infrastructure that we're looking to put in as part of this development, I'd like to think that it'll be the first stepping stone to doing that. In terms of the offices, I just wanted to talk briefly about the sort of jobs that we've currently got in Plymouth, because some of you may not be fully aware of what we are. We've got about 300 people currently employed in and around Estover. We're scattered around the place, which is not great in terms of trying to run a company, to have people in different locations. So to be able to bring those together under one office facility, particularly with having a store next door, is something we're really keen of. We've got quite a diversity of jobs that we've currently got within the head office, from buying, marketing, lots of computer jobs. We've got programmers. We've written our own software that we trade on the internet with, based in Plymouth. That came all out of Plymouth from nowhere. But one thing we haven't got that we're really keen to do is to provide a training facility, a national training facility for our company. And having a state-of-the-art shop next door will allow us to bring in key personnel from all over the country and really deliver a national training academy in Plymouth. And I know it's something which Chris Dawson is very keen to deliver as a big stepping stone for our company. So, we're hoping that when we get this, if we get this, that we can bring those people into the area. We already get a number of national visitors to our company, people from China and the Far East selling goods. So we're hoping that we're going to be able to generate a lot of activity in that area because of that. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Bailey Partnership, actually, who I think have produced a design of a building that we're really pleased with and proud of, and looking forward to getting built, really. I think, as Alistair mentioned there's been a lot of issues to get to this stage, to put the application before yourselves, and probably the largest ones have been the highways, and our partners at AECOM have been very proactive with us to really try and overcome, which have been some quite difficult issues along the way. And I think we've now got to a stage where both parties are comfortable and happy with what we're putting forward to you there. So really, thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I do hope that you'll look upon this application favourably and for what it will bring to Plymouth, as well as what it'll bring for the range as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Cotter. Thank you. Right. I'm going to throw this open to the committee now. First on my list is Councillor Pengelly.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to say that thank you very much to Ali for a full written report concerning this application and for a full verbal report today. Looking through the application, it's very rare this, but there are no objections to this application whatsoever. And a lot of work has been done to bring it here to the committee today. I welcome the fact that there's an applicant out there who wants to put a flagship store in Plymouth with a head office. This is going to mean jobs, employment, and it is a really good message to everyone out there that Plymouth is looking ahead. And it was good to hear from the speaker about the state-of-the-art shop for training purposes, and that people are going to come from all over to do their training here at Derriford. So I welcome this. I think it's great for Plymouth, really good news, and thank you to everyone concerned for getting it here today.
Thank you, Councillor Pengelly. I have Councillor Winter.
Thank you very much, Chair. I would like to mirror Councillor Pengelly's comments with reference to the range. It is great to have Plymouth receive this stamp of approval. It's a Plymouth success story, which I think we can all be quite proud of. Hopefully other big companies would like to base their head offices in Plymouth. However, we could wax lyrical about the range. What more interesting is the planning of this facility. One of the things which I'm quite curious about, and it's one of the things which was mentioned in reference to the joint local plan and DED 34, which is for the low carbon considerations. And at the moment, we haven't fully adopted the joint local plan. I'm curious as to the exact where we are with the joint local plan and the exact weighting we actually put on this. If that could be answered first, have a follow-up after that, please.
Peter or Julie, who's going to... Alistair? Yeah, who's going to... Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you very much, Chair. In relation to the joint local plan, that's been through all its consultation periods, and we've now officially submitted it to the Planning Inspectorate and are looking to have an examination in the spring next year. As it is a submitted plan, it does have the potential to carry a significant degree of weight. However, we do need to bear in mind that we do have the core strategy, which currently has the status of the development plan, and that was part of the reason I've had to explain the situations in relation to the retail element specifically there. It's also important to bear in mind the letters of representation or objection we potentially had to those individual policies, but in relation to Policy Ply 34, it is considered to carry a degree of weight in the decision-making process, and the requirement, in that for district heating has been is an important one, which is set out in the officer report. In this instance, while we would try and support the district energy provision in this area, there are some real specific issues associated with the store and what it's seeking to deliver, which has meant that that hasn't been able to be delivered in that instance, but the scheme is fully compliant with the core strategy policy for carbon savings delivered principally by photovoltaic cells, which cover the majority of the office and the retail store.
Thank you very much for answering that. Just curious, if we had fully adopted the joint local plan, would the same recommendation be given, i.e. to approve this, or would this be a grounds for refusing the application if we were to adopt the full DED 34 in the joint local plan?
Were the joint local plan adopted and become a development plan, it would certainly add a significant degree more weight to the policies. However, what I would say to you is, having determined the application, I don't think it would alter that decision, because while there is the policy requirement there for the district energy network, there are always going to be cases where requirements of policies, there may be specific reasons on a case-by-case basis that they may not able to be delivered. So it could, yes, potentially be the case that it might be refused, but where there are instances like these, I don't think it would potentially alter that decision for me as a case officer making a recommendation. And I don't know if Pete's got anything further to add on that.
Yeah, I'd just like to briefly add, yes, it's a matter of waiting. All other matters are very much in favour of the application. Yes, there is a concern from our low carbon team, and as Ali's explained that very well. If the joint local plan had been adopted, it would be more weight than it currently has, but so certainly as officers on the balance of the positives against the fact that there is a low carbon saving, even though it doesn't quite meet the requirements of a joint local plan, it would still, I'd be confident that the officers would still be recommending approval. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, I have Councillor Kelly, followed by Councillor Spaulding.
Thank you, Chair. Again, thanks to Alistair, a very comprehensive report. I think in my time on the committee, for such a large development, I've never come across that there's no representations at all, and I think that must be congratulated in terms of the work and perhaps the negotiations that have been done prior to coming to committee today. Especially, it's nice to see considerations for the pressure on the road network and the considerations that have been tabled today, because we're all aware that the north of the city does have some acute problems which are being sorted, and I think will be alleviated further with the Forder Valley Link Road. In terms of Plymouth as a city, yes, we can wax lyrical, but I think it's a real success story. Chris Dawson is our Alan Sugar, perhaps even wealthier than Sir Alan Sugar, and I think it puts Plymouth well and truly on the map. And to hear the fact that the range headquarters is now going to be built in Plymouth, keeping true to his roots, but also to provide additional training facilities that will mean people throughout the country come down. I think it will be a real key element of making the Derriford district centre the success that we all hope it will be going forward for the north of the city and indeed the city full stop. It's also pleasing to see, with regards to the Section 106 monies, that quite a chunk of that is going towards the Derriford Community Park, which certainly from the plans that I've seen will be a real asset to that part of the city for all to benefit and enjoy. So in summary, there's very few objections apart from the low carbon team. It looks a well thought out and designed innovative building with a local architect that's been instrumental in that design, which is good keeping it as well within the city. And I hope it's extremely successful and brings the jobs and the technical jobs to Plymouth that we all hope for. So I think it's a model application from where I'm sitting. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Kelly, thank you. Councillor Smalley.
Thank you very much. Same as colleagues, really, I welcome the scale and ambition of the application. This is a Plymouth success story, and it was great to hear from Mr Cotter this afternoon, even if it is a shame that Mr Dawson himself couldn't be here to speak to us, given the scale of the application and the significance, you know, to his business. Listening carefully to Alistair's remarks on city centre primacy and officers' determination that this application wouldn't necessarily on balance negatively impact that. And I accept that point given the broader economic development that this application could bring to the wider city. But at the same time, we can't lose sight of, you know, residents' concerns, and it doesn't take a genius to figure out that, you know, the north of the city has a problem at the moment with the Highways network. And I'm very concerned that Highways England object to this proposal. I'm just interested really to know what level of consultation the applicant has engaged in sort of locally on the ground with residents and other businesses, if any, because I am quite surprised that no objections have actually been submitted, given the level of concern that we all know is prevalent in the city in terms of the Highways network. So can I just ask, to our knowledge, has there been any such consultation?
Yes, Councillor. As part of the pre-application negotiations which took place, officers shared your concerns that community consultation ought to be taking place. The range met those challenges. There's been a detailed community consultation event which was organised. It was hoped to be located in this area, although it was felt better that that event actually took place in the city centre. So there was a series of events which took place in the Guildhall. There were numerous flyers which were put out in and around the local area to make sure people were fully made aware of that. There was a dedicated website set up for consultations to be submitted so they could help inform the scheme. And also on the days when the consultation took place, they were previously announced in the Herald to ensure that all opportunity had to visit. And also the applicants ensured that during the day when the consultation took place, they had people in the city centre, again handing out leaflets to ensure that everybody had the opportunity to do that. And the comments and things which were taken on board from that event were fully considered as part of the pre-application process to help evolve the scheme that's been submitted in front of you.
Thank you, that is encouraging. Just to reflect further on Councillor Winter's points about the low carbon team and their concerns, whilst we might not be able to give perhaps as much weighting as we would like to at this stage about their concerns, I think it's certainly worth highlighting, and I thank Councillor Winter for bringing that to our attention. If I could just ask about the parking on site, do we know, are there any proposals to have the electric charging points on site in the car park?
Those matters, unfortunately, I must apologise, weren't brought up with the applicant given a number of the other larger considerations we were dealing with at the time, but we are satisfied that there's a satisfactory level of car parking there, although we haven't addressed the matter of those measures with the applicant.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I have Councillor Davey.
Actually, that's the thing is, I find that a bit remiss of our officers that we haven't looked at that in other schemes. This has been, yeah, as my friend Councillor Sparling says, even in smaller schemes, these have been issues that we've talked about before in the committee. So I'm slightly, nonplussed that didn't even register on the radar. I want to go back to the low carbon consideration. There are two elements in that, as far as I could see in the objection. One was that they weren't providing a connection for the new district scheme when it comes in, but they also mention a contribution towards that other businesses have made. And I just wanted to ask, was any mention made during discussions of a contribution towards that, and what happened to that?
Just in relation to the potential contributions, I mean, I can say on the low carbon measures, there was a significant amount of negotiation went on with our applicants and the specialists doing those things, and that's led to the decision which officers have put in front of you. In relation to a contribution, that was certainly discussed with the applicant. However, because there were viability considerations with the application, all those matters had to be taken in, and as officers we've been seeking to prioritise what that money is being allocated towards. In relation to the ecological position, given that the site is currently largely vacant with shrubland, there is quite a high ecological benefit on that site, and that needed to be fully mitigated, and that's such that contribution went towards that. In relation to the transportation, it's vitally important that the local infrastructure can sustain it. So again, those elements were prioritised over that contribution being taken, given the viability considerations, and were it not for the direction of that money towards the transport infrastructure, it was only that as part of the suite of measures proposed by the authority and the applicants that enabled Highways England to be in a position where they were happy for the authority to determine the application.
Do you want to come back there?
No, just to say that yes, I can understand that. I'm slightly disappointed, but sort of the viability there. But just as an aside to Mr. Ford, could we make sure that in future, when parking provisions are being discussed in things, that electric charging points are brought up in those discussions? Thank you.
Okay. So, Councillor Morris.
Thanks, Chair. There's a couple of questions. First of all, naturally, that slide that we can see there is handily relevant. The green area, which is the undeveloped, which you mentioned as being accessed by the sort of utility road, is that part of the application site?
Yes, it is part of the application site. There's a condition on the application just to govern how that future area will appear prior to it being redeveloped, just to ensure that it won't be used for things like ad hoc car parking, to ensure that it's satisfactory visually.
And well done, Alistair, for answering my question before I asked it, which was to be specific about that. I was concerned both about that and that it's not just going to be covered in rubble. The second one is, Mike mentioned it about the traffic chaos in the north of the city, which seems to be going on ad infinitum. Could you be very specific about the conditions that are attached? There are various. In terms of phasing, both of the construction works and of the opening of the store and of the office in relation to other works which need to be done before that can start. So, for instance, how it links into the Forder Valley Link Road, any works which might need to be done at the Manadin Junction, the Derriford Transport Scheme.
Certainly. The issue about the Forder Valley, the reason the Forder Valley Link Road comes in as part of a key consideration of this application is very specific to the strategic highway network and the A38. Plymouth has a lot of known issues at the Manadon Junction, and the Forder Valley Link Road, while providing a new connection up to the north, will also provide a capacity improvement, so there'll be less vehicles travelling through the Manadon Junction, and they'll be going instead utilising the Forder Valley Link Road. I will look to Scott behind me if he wants to add anything kind of in further, but it was through the negotiations with Highways England and their concerns about Manadon Junction specifically that the office element obviously encourages a large amount of trips during the peak hours, and that was where their concern was, and that actually the capacity issue that the Forder Valley Link Road would alleviate would be linked in to the store, and that's why there are a number of those conditions. But Scott may want to add further. No, Scott seems quite happy. If you don't want any further information, but that's why the Forder Valley Link Road connections are there.
Did you want to add something, Scott?
No, one other thing I just wanted to mention, Chair, was obviously there's a certain amount of issues taking place up there at the moment on the Northern Corridor because the Derriford Transport Scheme is under construction. But like I say, that is due to finish in the around the early around the sort of the March-April time next year. Whilst those works, there are works taking place along William Prance Road. We have sought to, where possible, is to try and facilitate, if the application was to be approved today, that we would make sure that the works are coordinated, so we're not doing abortive works at present on William Prance Road, which would then have to be taken up as a result of any further development works associated with the range.
Okay. Yeah, that's useful. Right. Okay. I have no other speakers who've indicated to me, so therefore I am proposing to move to the vote. The recommendation on your agenda is recommendation to approve conditionally, subject to the 106 agreement and the refer to the Secretary of State as outlined on page 5. So, with that, all in favour of the recommendation to grant, please show. Sorry. Huh? Sorry. Right. What's that? Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Yeah. The application is granted. Okay? Right. Thank you very much indeed. Right. That brings us on to item 7, which is the application decisions issued. You have had a list of those circulated. Any comments or a member wish to raise anything on those? Agreed. Appeal. Item 8, appeal decisions. Those have been circulated. Any comments? No. Agreed. Item 9, exempt business. There is none. So in that case, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much for your attendance.